Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. Learning Ally, a nonprofit education organization, helps to transform the lives of struggling learners by delivering proven solutions that help students reach their potential. We have a heritage of supporting students with a reading deficit like dyslexia. Our award-winning human-read audiobook solution helps students in grades 3 through 12 access books they want and need to read to help them succeed. Visit www.learningally.org for more information.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure.
Hello and welcome to Empowered Dyslexia. I'm your host, Stephen Yearout.
And I'm Yearout.
We're here to help you be a better informed partner in education. On this show, we discuss dyslexia and other related disorders. We talk about special education policy at our local, state, and federal level, and that's going to be part of our topic today. We also interview experts in their field, and the thing that I love to do the most is I love to talk to people about their personal experiences growing up, and how did they deal with and get through life with learning disabilities. So please be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube, leave us comments. It helps us with our algorithm. So, Asher here, he's the host for Empowered Dyslexia Student Edition, and I wanted to come on here and so we could have just a real discussion about dyslexia.
You can find all of our podcasts on the following apps. You can find it on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Fire TV, Spotify, Google Podcast, Pandora. If you have a podcast app that you use, it'll be on there.
Yep. If we're there, right?
Yep. Hello and welcome to Empowered Dyslexia. Today we're having a real talk about dyslexia between father and son.
So really I wanted to bring Asher on and have just a real frank discussion. There was nothing really prepared for this show. Asher has had the opportunity to really see this progression. What does it look like from identification all the way through actually going and speaking at the state capitol in support of new legislation? And I can sit up here all day and tell you what I remember, but what's really important are the children's voices, the kids' voices, because they're in the middle of this. I mean, we have to listen to what they are going through and what they're dealing with right now. So I thought it would be an interesting conversation to have. We haven't prepared any questions. This is just going to be off the fly. You ready?
Yep.
All right, so let's start off with, you get asked the question, what does it feel like to be dyslexic?
The only answer I can give you to that question is, and the answer I give to that question whenever I'm asked, is that I don't know. And that sounds stupid. Well, how do you not know how it feels like to be dyslexic? Aren't you dyslexic? I don't know because I have been dyslexic my whole life. I don't know how it is to be normal per se. This is a life I live, so to be not dyslexic would be weird. It wouldn't be me, because that's not how I live my life. I live my life through being dyslexic, and I know no different from that.
So what does that mean, though? You wouldn't be you. I mean, we know that dyslexia is a learning disability when it deals with reading. I mean, I can understand the position of I wouldn't know what it means to be not dyslexic because this is the way I've been my entire life. Was there ever a point before you were identified? You were identified late seventh grade. Was there a point before that that you felt different than the other kids in your class, or knew that something possibly wasn't right?
Um, I would say no, because everyone talks about normal, but nobody's normal. Like, if you look at it like that, nobody's normal. Nobody lives the same life as the person sitting to the right or left of you. So if you look at it that way, we're all, likewise, we're all the same, but we're all very much different. Um, so that's kind of how I looked at it, and that I guess I was so young, I really just didn't understand or didn't see through it that way that I could have something wrong, because the way I looked at it is everyone was different. So why, it's, of course I'm going to be different than the kid sitting next to me.
Do you remember being, this was kindergarten time frame or just before kindergarten? What was your favorite book? It was a book series that you loved and wanted every book.
It was Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I think it wasn't in kindergarten. It was probably like first and second grade, I think.
So I remember seeing you sitting on your bed and flipping through the pages. And do you remember me asking you, "Hey, are you really reading that?"
Probably not. I really don't remember, but I do know that usually when I would read those books, I would read some of the words, but like those books are really more of a picture book because the way they're set up. I just would flip through it, look at the pictures, and then maybe read a sentence or two, if that.
So your younger brother was diagnosed before you, correct?
Yes.
Did you have a feeling about what Aiden was going through, or have any understanding about Aiden and his dyslexia?
No, I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand. I don't think anyone could understand what he was going through. Just because we're not in his point of view. We're not the ones reading. We're not the ones doing the tests. So I didn't understand it. I was still, he was diagnosed in third grade. I was in fourth grade. So I was still 9 years old, 10 years old. I didn't understand right from wrong at that point still. So.
So you were diagnosed late seventh grade. How did that feel, being diagnosed with dyslexia when you were in all honors classes? You had been basically an A and B student pretty much up until that point, until seventh grade when you got into pre-AP or honors, high honors classes. How did that make you feel whenever they came back and said you're dyslexic?
I was just like, really? Like it's kind of silly to say I don't really remember, but it was about 5 years ago, close to 6 years ago. So to say I don't remember, I guess you could say is an excuse, but I really don't. I don't really remember. I kept going on living my life just how I was the day before. It didn't really bring me down or make me look at myself in the mirror differently. But to answer the question, I really don't know. Don't remember.
One of the things I would like to, because getting your teachers to provide accommodations, and this is the thing that kind of, as a parent, didn't really understand why it was harder to get one child's accommodations followed versus the other child's accommodations followed when they were very similar, almost identical. So how did you feel? And this is more talking to the teachers out there. How did you feel when you were trying to get your teachers to understand, or you were really trying to understand how to properly be an advocate, self-advocate? I know that they talk about that a lot in school, but when you had to go to the teacher and say, hey, Miss so-and-so, Mr. so-and-so, I'm supposed to get extra time, or I'm supposed to get this read to me or whatever, and they wouldn't provide those services, or they just completely forgot, or whatever the situation was. I mean, can you kind of talk to that a little bit, and maybe to the teachers, and let them understand from a student's perspective why that is so important, the accommodations?
So from a student's perspective, asking a teacher to get our accommodations that we need is, I can say, you can either come out one of two ways. You need to say it's really scary or it's really easy, depending on the teacher, of course. If it's a teacher that y'all have a good relationship, and this isn't like their first time, and you just say, hey, whatever, I need notes. I'm not supposed to be graded on notes, and they say, okay, my bad, and they change the grade, or they give you the notes. That's different. Or there can be a teacher that never gives you the accommodations, and then you have to go up to them, and pretty much what happens when they never give you the accommodations, what happens is you already know the answer that's going to be given to you before you even give the question. So a lot of times you just don't even bother asking, because you already know they're going to say no, or they're going to say you're lazy, do it yourself, or whatever the cause they're going to give you. I feel like this year has been a lot easier asking for your accommodations, because everything's virtual for the most part. You can just email your teacher, and it's a lot easier to email someone than to go up to them face to face and ask them to give them to you.
Would that be because you're not having to stand up in front of the class and walk up?
Oh, it's not even standing in front of the class. It's not even standing in front of the class. You can do it after class, but still, it's the same. It's the same thing, because you're still having to ask the teacher. If it's in front of the class, after the class, that doesn't matter. It's the student-teacher interaction that I guess you can say you're afraid that you're gonna get rejected or told to go off or do it yourself. You're lazy.
So what would your advice to the teachers that are watching this, or the administrators that are watching this, that have the ability to talk to teachers? What would your advice to teachers be about providing accommodations?
My advice is that please listen to the student. if they have any questions or if they ask you for their accommodations, don't just tell them off, because that discourages them even more to not try. One, to not try in your class. Two, to make the rest of your time in that class with that student a terrible time. Because once they figure that you don't care, that's when we stop caring, and then it's just a who cares less.
And that comes up, or that brings up the analogy that or the perfect analogy that you came up with about dyslexia being much like Jenga. Do you want to give that description?
So my analogy that I came up on the fly was that having dyslexia was like a big, large-scale game of Jenga, because all the time people, it could be teachers, other fellow students, random people, parents or siblings or whatever you want to call it, someone in your life says something negative about you, about your disability, about how you're stupid or how you're not trying, you're lazy, and it's like taking a block out of the Jenga game. And all of these
So you have your tower.
You have your tower, and all of these, I wouldn't even know what you call it.
The blocks.
Comments that these people make, rude and disrespectful, and I guess you could say harmful comments. It's like taking a block out, and at some point, the tower is just gonna fall and crumble, and that's when you hit your rock bottom, and that's when you wanna. That's when kids want to drop out of school and want to,
They stop caring.
Yeah, they stop caring. They just give up on themselves.
They believe the lie that
they're stupid, because once you start hearing that you're stupid, that you're dumb, whatever, so many times you're gonna start believing that, and once you believe it, then there's
and to be fair, most of the time there are some that have come right out and say those type of things, but it's the reading between the lines.
Yeah.
When the comments that are being said are really a backhanded way of saying, these type of things that we've heard about dyslexic students or people with dyslexia. And the thing that I really loved about this Jenga analogy was the fact that this game of Jenga that he's talking about, it doesn't end in school. It doesn't end when that class is over. The next year, we're playing with a much less stable
the game doesn't
board.
reset.
Right, it doesn't reset. And then, at some point in time, like you said, it's going to fall.
And the game just merely starts in school. It follows you on to college, to your personal life, to your business life, in the workforce, the office, whatever you do. So it does follow you, and it follows you, and it won't stop following you.
Right. So I have a question here. She's asking, what type of advice would you give the students that are there now, the younger students that are starting to or having to deal with understanding what accommodations are and why to use them, meaning not to be ashamed of using your accommodations? What advice would you give those students when they're first identified and they're first learning how to navigate the waters dealing with using accommodations?
I'm gonna speak on something off that too. I don't think that you will never stop being embarrassed about using your accommodations. And that's probably something rough to say, but you aren't. It is embarrassing to get up and leave the class to go to a separate room to get it read to you. But you're just going to have to learn to deal with that embarrassment. And when you're a little kid, I think it's easier. It would have been way easier for me to start off at like my brother when he was in 3rd grade than it was for me to start going into 8th grade. And that is when I started having to leave the class to get my accommodations. For a younger kid to start getting accommodations, I would just tell them that it is like giving a paraplegic a prosthetic leg, or someone without a leg a prosthetic leg, because it's silly to make them walk on one leg. You give them a prosthetic leg so they can walk on 2 legs like everyone else. That's the exact same thing.
The accommodations are meant to level the playing field so that you can
Perform like everyone else.
perform at grade level or perform at your ability level, correct? It's not, do you see accommodations as a leg up?
No. That's why I said it's exactly like a paraplegic or an amputee
Well, you
that
could,
doesn't have a limb that gets a prosthetic, because it's leveling the playing field out for them. They're able to still do the things that they were able to do. Or if you were born without a limb, it's giving you the...
well, we can make it even simpler, right? Accommodations is very similar to, or it is the same thing as allowing somebody to use a pair of glasses sitting in your room, sitting closer to the board where you sit. It is allowing the person, the child, to be able to perform at their level, and to get the same access to the material as everybody else in the class.
Yep.
So now that you've seen what it looks like to have your brother identified first, you've seen what it looks like in your own personal life getting identified, and we chose not to have you go through remediation through the school system, because we felt like with just accommodations that you could perform because you were performing at such a high level. And from a parent's perspective, now looking back on it, I didn't realize how much of a mistake that was, by not letting you immediately go through a remediation. We ended up going through an outside remediation for you. My main, and your mother's main idea behind that was the fact that you were 7th grade going into 8th grade. So it was the middle of 7th grade, and you didn't have any time to waste. And we didn't see, although the teachers that worked with Aiden were amazing, we didn't see the type of growth that we would hope to see out of a dyslexia program. You've even got to see what it means to really become a self-advocate. So now let's move on to, there's an amazing group of ladies here in Texas. They call themselves the Kitchen Table Group. And they're asking for the state of Texas to align its policies around dyslexia and identification of dyslexics to federal IDEA law by requiring them to start the identification process with a FIE, full individual evaluation. So you got to go testify in front of the House Public Education Committee.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about that experience and kind of what you've seen from the background about all of the process that's going on here?
So I got to go testify in Austin at the House Committee hearing.
Public Education House.
Public Education House hearing, and testify for the bill, and that it was a good experience. It was a learning experience, something that most people will never do in their life. That's for sure. People, when you look from a perspective how we're looking in, it's a lot of time and a lot of a long process to get this stuff done. Takes a lot of time and a lot of effort for just one bill to be passed. And it is, people think that, it just goes, they write the bill on paper, they vote on it, goes to the governor, signs it, boom. No, it takes months to get something passed, like the bill we're trying to get passed. It is a long, tedious process. It is sort of drawn out. They have to read it and read it and read it and read it over and over again to make sure they have a good idea of what they're voting on and if that's something the senators want to vote on.
So from the House, well, on both the House and the Senate side, when a bill is introduced out of committee, it's got to be read 3 times on the House floor and the same thing on the Senate floor, and then it gets passed on to the governor's desk. What is your feeling behind, and this is purely just your opinion, but what is your opinion from a student's perspective with dyslexia that about us having to create a law to ask that we follow federal law?
It really,
because sorry to interrupt you, because at the end of the day, this bill is really about you and others like you. So this bill is directly affects you and possibly your kids, right? Mm-hmm. So, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead with your...
What I was going to say is that it really doesn't surprise me because people break laws every day. And they will continue to break laws until they're stopped. And if they never get stopped, then they're going to keep breaking the law. Just like how, like teachers that don't give us our accommodations.
Right.
They will not give us our accommodations until someone puts a stop and they make sure that they will give us our accommodations and that we get the right help that we need, or we get the right testing. Like I know some school districts don't test for dyslexia, and that they'll keep not testing until someone goes in there and puts a stop to that and makes sure that there is testing going on. So it doesn't really surprise me that that we're having to pass a law for Texas to follow federal law.
When we were on our way back after testifying, I testified, your brother testified, there was a lot of families that were there that testified. I asked you and your brother a question, and I'll ask you this question here live. So you've seen this process from identification to, having to go support legislation or laws, bills, and the chances of you or your brother having children who are dyslexic is very high. So I asked y'all, as soon as you find out that your child's dyslexic, what do you do? So I asked you, what's the first thing you're sitting in that? If it's like it is now currently a 504 meeting or an ARD meeting, what do you do?
Right after I leave the meeting, I'd probably give Dr. Conway a call. I'm pretty sure that's what I told you. I'd give Dr. Conway a call, tell him the situation, and get my son or daughter put in the NOW program to get them help immediately so they don't have to go through the struggles that I went through.
So you would just sidestep the public education system.
I wouldn't even bother.
But here's the thing. What we're doing now is really trying to make positive change inside of the public education system because we want everybody to have access to high caliber, scientifically proven intervention, and that these children and families get the most support that they are afforded by law, right? It was funny because you said call Dr. Conway and your brother said call me.
Yeah.
Which I would say that both of those answers are correct. Although it's not far removed, right? So you're a sophomore now.
About to be a junior.
About to be a junior. If you had the opportunity to speak to Asher Yearout, 7th grader, or an Aiden Yearout, 3rd grader, about them being identified, what would you say? What would you tell them?
If I had to go back and right now talk to myself in 7th grade, I don't really know. I would have just told myself that it would be okay, that no one's gonna think you're stupid or you're dumb, because just roughly 20% of the population is dyslexic, if you know it or not. So I would just tell myself that there's nothing to be worried about. There is you'll be all right. Better things to come in the future. Same thing with Aiden. Even though he probably didn't understand what dyslexia is or anything, just tell him that everything's gonna be okay and that there's nothing wrong with you.
I think telling them nothing is wrong with you is telling them that they're not broken is definitely appropriate. Telling them that you have worth is, to me, when we're talking about dyslexia, and I mean, especially here in the current state that we're in here in Texas, there's a stigma around special education. I mean, there was when I was in school. People didn't want to talk about it, and that same stigma today. It scares a lot of parents away from providing or allowing the type of support that their child really needs. I want people to understand that regardless if your child's in 504, they're in special education, they have dyslexia, they have autism, they have Asperger's, they have Down syndrome, your child has worth. Your child is beautiful, and your child deserves the best education that we can provide them. Just because they have a learning disability does not mean that they can't learn. It doesn't mean that they're less than. And we have to stop the stigma around special education. It's not a dungeon or a place that we put kids. I understand that that was common practice, many years ago, but today it's not that. It's not a place. It is a service. I mean, I try to explain to people all the time that, having your child go through speech in school, that is special education. I mean, I don't know of any parents, I've never heard of any parents that would turn down speech for their child because it was under special education. And I want to make sure that we look at this through a different lens and make sure that we're providing the most appropriate services and help to everybody that is involved in that child's education. That is the teachers, that is the administrators, that is the counselors, the therapists, the parents, and especially the child. Because this has to be, the conversation always has to start with child first. We have to always ask the question, is this the best solution? Is this the best option? Is this the best service for the child? Not, well, that's not the way that we do it, or, our staff doesn't want to do X, Y, Z. This isn't an adult thing. We need to make sure that we provide the services so that child can grow up and be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. Would you agree?
100%. Well, you're talking about the stigma of special education. A lot of people think kids that are in special education are dumb, stupid, any name that critiques or makes fun of your mental capabilities. And really, whenever you talk about the stigma, like, you're part of the reason why there's a stigma, because you're the one thinking that that are calling these people whatever.
Well,
and it stops. Well, what I was gonna say, it stops with you. Once you stop saying it, and you teach your kids that they don't need to. It's like a chain effect, a domino. I guess that's what you call it, domino effect.
I absolutely 100% agree that it starts with us, each of us. It starts with stepping through the fear and making sure that if the person across the table from you in your special education meeting, ARD meeting, whatever you want to call it, is saying something that's derogatory about special education itself, well, then that is a whole different conversation we need to have about special education. I just had this conversation with a friend the other day about if we're worried about dyslexic kids going into special education, then we've been in special education is such a bad place, then we've been put on notice that we need to fix special education.
Or we need to rethink or relearn what special education is. Because I think a lot of people still have the thought of special education some heebie-jeebie dungeon they put the kids in. And maybe it is some places, but
and if it is, honestly, if it is that, then you contact me and we will get that fixed. If your child's being stuck in a place and they're not being provided appropriate education, they're not being provided FAPE, they're not being provided true services to help them be the best version of themselves, contact us. I mean, that's right up our alley. We have to re-educate ourselves on what is acceptable, and we have to stay away from fear. And that's what we're really talking about when we're talking about that stigma. The stigma is really fear. I don't want my child to be looked at as XYZ. I don't want to be looked at as a parent who had a child that has XYZ. But that's why I'm saying those children are beautiful. Those children have worth, and they deserve education just like your AP students, just like your honor students, just like your gen ed students. So we have to make sure that when we're talking about education and literacy for all, we mean all. No matter what your race is, no matter what your sex is, no matter what your level of disability is. We do any and everything possible to make sure that those kids get help. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So, I know I've been kind of rambling here. This is something that I think has been needing to be said, and we really have to make sure that our kids are and our families are getting the most appropriate information to make the most informed decision about their child and their education. So, Asher, I want to give you the last 2 minutes. Would you, if there was something that we didn't talk about that you really feel like that needs to be said, or some advice or support that or you'd like to provide for parents, teachers, kids, whatever. And then I would also ask that I'd like to know what you would tell your son or daughter if they are identified with dyslexia.
The first thing I want to say is that for teachers is to not give up on students, and this is just students in general, especially students with dyslexia or any other learning disability, because once you give up on them, they will figure out that you have given up on them, and then they will give up on themselves. And that's the last thing we need is kids giving up on themselves, because teachers have given up on themselves. Because if you have a teacher that really believes in you and will push you, then you'll push yourself because you're being pushed. And what I would say to my son or daughter that if they were identified with dyslexia, I would tell them that it'll be all right. Nothing's wrong with you, and that we'll get you the right help to make sure you will be successful. Successful in life, successful in school, successful in the business world.
I know that a lot of times it's been kicking and screaming, when, your mother and I talked to you and your brothers about advocacy and talking. But I have to tell you, I was so proud the day that you came into the living room and you said, I see how much good is coming out of Empower Dyslexia and how much information is being shared and how this is helping, parents and students and, the entire environment, and that you want to do Empower Dyslexia Student Edition. The fact that you're willing to stand up and fight for others that don't have somebody to fight for them, and you're willing to do this at such a young age, you and your brother both are willing to do this at such a young age is that's definitely a proud papa moment. And I want to tell you that I love you. You are so special. You and your brothers are so special. And with leaders like y'all, like leaders like Beckley Wilson, who the bill that we're trying to get through the Senate right now, with leaders like y'all that are going to go out there and fight for the kids that don't have anybody to fight for them, this world will be a better place. We will change generations. So thank you for your willingness to share and being vulnerable, because you have to be vulnerable to sit up here and tell your story. And, think about the possibility that somebody looks at you and says that, draws a conclusion that they think that you may not be as smart as everybody else. So, I mean, that's scary. So keep doing what you're doing. You really are changing generations. All of you. All of these kids that went down to Austin, all of these kids that are self-advocating, that are teaching their teachers the importance of why you have to follow a 504 plan, why you have to follow an IEP. You are changing lives, because if they figure out that they have to change, they have to follow the rule, they have to follow those guidelines, those legal documents for you, then they figure out that they have to follow them for everybody else. So, I'm so proud of each and every one of you. Keep doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see your next show. So, it's kind of rough. That was kind of a rough one. Be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube and leave us comments, right?
Yep.
It helps us on our algorithm. Asher's looking for some outstanding young self-advocates. So if your child fits those description, please reach out to Asher. You can reach him at Asher, A-S-H-E-R, at empowerdyslexia.org. Send him an email. Let's see if we can get something set up and possibly be a guest on Empower Dyslexia Student Edition. So we have real quick, I want to jump into, we just got just a few minutes left. I want to jump into events that are going on. There's a virtual conference that's coming up on June 4th. It is being hosted by Learning Ally, who is our main sponsor for Empower Dyslexia. Learning Ally has been doing these virtual conferences for quite some time now, and they are stepping up the quality of these events year after year and getting an amazing list of speakers. What's really cool about this event is that teachers that need to get CE credits, continuing education credits, they can get 12 CE credits for participating. Again, this starts on June 4th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is going to be a virtual event. And if you can't get to the live event, it's going to be on demand, and these sessions will be available until December 1st. The really nice thing that they've added this year is the ability to talk to others, being able to network live there on the day of the event. Learning Ally has provided all of our listeners and viewers a discount code, and the discount code is SPOD, S-P-O-D, Empower. And when you register for the premium pass, the $99 pass, you will get $20 off when using the SPOD Empower discount code. You can also, if you do register and you are going to participate, please stop by our booth. We're going to have a virtual booth, the Empower Dyslexia booth, and you can come by and speak to all of the team here at Empower Dyslexia. We'd love to chat with you and get to know each and every one of you. Some of the keynote speakers. Do you want to talk about the keynote speakers?
The keynote speakers are going to be Andrew Lewis, talking about perseverance, passion, and purpose, finding my way.
And Andrew Lewis is an Olympic sailor out of Trinidad who is actually going to be Skyping in from Japan because he's getting ready for the Summer Olympics.
Dr. David Kilpatrick, embracing the scientific revolution in reading and dragging your colleagues along with you. And Dr. Susan Hall, what does structured literacy look like in practice?
So, all great topics, great speakers. Can't wait to be there and participate in this. And hopefully I get to have some conversations with each and every one of you that show up. Do you want to take this last part?
Yes. As we like to recommend, if you think that your child or student is struggling in school, please get them tested as soon as possible. Knowing is only half the battle. We cannot stress that enough, that early identification is key to their success. We have letter templates on our website at www.empowerdyslexia.info, as well as a list of events and tips for parents. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
That was a good job there. So thank you again. As Asher said, thank you again for tuning in each and every week. It's an honor to do this show. I mean, we're 3 years into this, and I still am just blown away with the amount of support and feedback that we get each and every week. Keep it up. We're here for you. Until next time, here's a word from our sponsors.
Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. At Learning Ally, we are always looking for new ways to engage readers struggling with a reading deficit like dyslexia and help them work to their potential. Visit www.learningally.org to learn about the Learning Ally audiobook solution, including which of your students are eligible for access. If you live in Texas, we have great news. The Texas Education Agency provides access to the Learning Ally audiobook solution for all K-12 public and charter school students with reading deficits. Get started today by visiting www.learningally.org/Texas.